So in 1984, the Oaks decided to add on.
Yeah.
And it was a live-in, did-in room, and there's a picture in here in this brochure of what a live-in, did-in room looked like.
Yeah, the concept was back in the older days, 60s and 70s, I guess. The front of well, basically deadened the whole control room, but especially the back end. But somehow the LED people came up with the concept of livening the back end and deadening the front end. And they used some panels to reflect some of the early reflections from the back. And I want to throw this in real quick. Tony Brown was also a pretty big presence out here in the Superior days. And he basically, I think he was one of the ones that, told the Oaks, you guys really need to update a little bit. And that might have been one of the reasons that they decided to go for it. Well, plus the fact that they were probably at their peak at that point with Elvira and so forth. And also, Duane had owned Superior, he and his wife, and when we did the update, the Oaks bought in with him. So that was another reason, I guess, they just figured they had the money to go ahead and do it.
Well, at that time, Tony Brown and Paul Overstreet were writers for Silverline Gold Line, weren't they?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So all their demos were done here.
Yeah, yeah, I did a lot with Paul.
Yeah. So the studio was designed by Jim Andred?
No, he was the contractor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he oversaw the construction of it. Bob Todrank from Valley Audio, I believe it was Valley Audio, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I sent him an email. I thought he was going to be here.
Was the designer.
There's a picture of him there. Yeah. And so they wired it too.
Yeah. The control, we kept the old control room as a drum booth or isolation booth. We didn't have a lot of isolation back then. That was it. This was the main room. And this was really a wall, outside wall. So they built the control room back here where Ricky's is. And I think at that time, it was in 1984, and I believe it was around 80 grand to do it. And money was 21% in those days. Mm-hmm. So that was quite an investment.
Yeah.
But they put in a, they poured, well, it's gone now, but there were a couple of different levels up behind the console. That was all poured in concrete. The where the monitors were was the wall between here and there was big and thick, and they actually poured gravel in those walls to isolate decouple any of the monitors, and they put in Uri, what were they,
813s.
Yeah, huge. They sounded great too.
The ones there, those.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we put in we replaced the old MCI with a Harrison MR4, which is a really fine console. Added a Studer 880. Mm-hmm. Bought some new mics, bought some outboard gear, bought some Lexicon, the 224XL, the Eventide 2016, some Keypex. We still weren't digital at that point, so we had no DATs either. We had a couple of 2-track machines. And
a half-inch machine.
We didn't have one.
Oh, you didn't have that?
Well, we had maybe had an older one in the other room. Yeah, because he had some old Ampex.
100 Ampex?
Well, no, it was 440.
Oh, 440?
Yeah.
Well, the 440 used to be over here.
Yeah, and I saw the Otari and the Studer out in the hall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we still use that half-inch. It's bad.
So at that point, when you added the control room, people like Ron Chansey and Eddie Raven and Charlie Fields and Steve Cropper come out here to work.
Steve came out here with Razzie Bailey. I knew Steve and worked for Steve in Memphis at Trans Maximus. That's where I got started. I don't know if any of you ever heard of an engineer down there, Ron Capone, who worked for Skaggs. He was a legend, and he was the chief engineer. Steve was part owner of the studio. I got a job there setting up and tearing down, so I could learn things, and would use it after hours just to learn and experience. Experience was the best teacher.
Well, we had Tony Gore, the Bishops, the Perrys, McCameys did their albums here.
Yeah, they all got started here, basically.
And one thing about gospel albums is that those groups would do it every year. You know, so when they went back on the road, they'd have product.
Yeah.
Can you think of any of those albums? I mean, you know, it gets to a point where you do so many albums. Which ones, kind of, you just sat there smiling all the time?
Well, I always enjoyed, Carol Robertson was another client of Eddie's that recorded here a lot. He was a soloist. He's from Ripley, Mississippi, and I still work with Carol. We've probably done close to 40 or 50 albums together. He's done as many as 2 or 3 in a year. It's usually one, but I enjoyed working with him because most of it was done live. Even his vocals, we usually did live and kept it.
Wow.
Tony Gore, I really loved working with Tony. Tony came from the Wilburns. He started his own group called Tony Gore and Majesty. And I liked Tony working with him because he always, he was not in a rush to do anything. And he would do orchestration, and he always took the time and that it took to make it just right.
Yeah.
So, Betty Jean Robinson was another one that used to work out here quite a bit. And I left this off the list because of my memory. Betty Jean was a pleasure to work with.
Yeah.
And she did a lot of her vocals live. And one night I remember we were sitting in there. We had the TV on because the Gulf War was in progress. And she was nervous as she could be about that. And a couple of guys, a couple of the musicians started clowning around a little bit, and that didn't suit her too much. So finally, after a couple of times, and we were all kind of giving them the stink eye about it, but after a while, she just said, "That's it. Let's close the session. Tell me what I owe you, and we'll all go home."
Really?
She did, just canceled it.
Well, we have Brent King here, and there's a Randy. You got the ball. Maybe Brent can, because he worked on a lot of albums here.
Get on up here, boy. You get up here, Derek.
Now we're talking about the Acorn period.
How you doing? Oh man. Ah, good to see you too, pal.
So back when there was the Harrison console here.
Harrison. I actually worked here in it was either 77 or 78 for the first time. The Oaks, there was this Swedish guy that had hired the Oaks band and some chick singer. And so I came out here, and that's the first time, that's when the control room was in there. And when they actually did when you guys had Acorn, I'd seen pictures of it, and I think I came out and visited one time, but I never got to work into it here again until Ricky bought the place.
Okay. Well, can you think of anything about Acorn? Any other stories? Or?
Well, Mix Magazine did an article when we did the renovation, and so it's quite entertaining. I doubt there's many copies of this floating around, but they did a nice article with some pictures, and we had an ad in there and everything to celebrate the opening.
Did they ever do that for us, Lee? Did they ever do that for us?
We mixed it as they did an article on one of your projects.
Oh.
And I think they
Get after 'em,
took a
Lee.
few
Thank you.
pictures. Yeah, but they never took a picture.
So
towards the studio.
I guess this is the point where we're going to make the transition from Superior and Acorn to Skaggs Place. So I want everybody to thank Jimmy for being with us.
Thank you.
And
Yeah,
we're
man.
going
Proud
to
to be
add
here.
Lee.
Glad to be here. You need to move?
Yeah.
Okay.
Since,
No problem.
well, I just want to get another. Can I have that chair?
That was on the table.
Oh, you stay here.
Okay.
We can get another chair here. Let's scoot around.
Well, I think what we need to do is get Jimmy drunk. He's got to have more stories than that.
I know, it was pretty tame, really.
Really?
Yeah. You know, it wasn't like working in pop music where things might get a little different. And I'll throw this in real quick if I have a minute. When I was working at TMI in Memphis, Jerry Lee Lewis, and I was just starting out, and I went home one night, and the owner of the studio, the co-owner, Jerry Williams, called me and said, Jerry Lee wants to record tonight. And I'd worked all day. He said, but if you'll come in, I'll put you on the card. Well, that was good. I was just starting out, didn't have any money. So I went in and wanted to start at midnight. And he had such a entourage that it was, there was a waitress from the Steak and Egg Kitchen from across the street there, sitting on a couch in front of the console. Carl Perkins was in the band, and she hollered out, "Tell Carl to play Blues Suede Shoes." Well, they had such a group of people that came in that the next night they had to put a guard on the door to allow the people in. And his father-in-law, I think, who had one arm, was waving a gun around and things like that. So we never had that kind of thing going on here.